This is our emotional intelligence process that we work with. We start with the awareness that we've talked about. We work very, very deeply with inner child work, particularly with fear and anxiety. It is, I think, one of the most powerful tools in our toolkit. It absolutely transformed my life. It has transformed many, many clients. And I wanted to, yeah, oh, it is just the biggest game changer. And I wanted to come back to what Claire was originally saying about the difference between coaching and counseling, because some people can say, well, inner child work, you're going back into the past. We look at this very differently. The inner child is alive in you now. We are still working with the present. It's that understanding that that inner child is a part of me, will always be a part of me. How do I speak with her and be with her and help her? Because at the moment she's kicking off and she's not coping, and I'm pushing her out into the world, or I'm being quite judgmental of her, because we can often be very self-critical of our inner children. How do I come into a relationship with her? Once the fear and anxiety within the inner child, because it's very, very young emotions, there's the vulnerability, there's the abandonment, that's often what is going on with the inner child. Once that is held, then we grow up a little bit and we move into more of an inner teenager space, which is where we work with anger. We work with the inner child first, because if we step straight into anger, it can be terrifying if the inner child isn't held. So when we work through our process, this is a process that we work with in our retreat.
Yeah, if you've not healed your inner child and you have anger, that will trigger, if they had parents that were fighting or whatever.
Yeah. So to be able to step into anger, we need to be able to, and for clients who are really unable to feel any anger or go into anger, it's often because there is much more inner child work to be done. Once those two parts of ourselves, the fearful and the teenage anger is we've got that communication, we've got that management, then we really look at developing the adult. And this is something we are never taught. How do I be an adult? Suddenly we just kind of go through puberty, and then we kind of, fall out of college, and then we get a job, and then we're an adult.
That's not very beneficial, is it?
Paying bills and emptying the dishwasher.
But that is what we decide as being an adult, but it's actually not very useful for society to have an autonomous collective of people, because, at school, if you're really autonomous, that's not helpful. If you're really autonomous as a child, not helpful to the adults. They don't want you saying, well, I don't really want to put my shoes on. They want you putting your shoes on because you've got to get in the car. At school, you've got to do what you're told. If you're in a working situation, kind of, you've got to do what you're told and pay your bills and do all the things. It's not helpful to society for us to be adults, to be, fully functioning, emotionally intelligent adults, questioning adults, really making decisions for ourselves. So we're kind of kept in this sort of state. I just want to pick up on, before we go on to the next bit, that if you think back to our stories, Laura and my sharing our stories, actually, I was really comfortable with anger. I'd been surrounded. It was not an unhealthy expression of anger, to be fair, but I was presenting in the world as an angry teenager. Where I needed to do my work was to really, really teach my inner child that it was incredibly safe to be heard and she was loved. Laura had the opposite. Her comfort zone was fear and anxiety, and being that little girl, she absolutely needed to go and embrace the anger work to be able to get to that next step. So our emotional stunted places were different.
So after we've developed the adult, then we're looking at self-love practices of how we put boundaries and communication in place, how we care for ourselves, how we make sure that we are eating the right foods, how we're living our best lives, how we are saying no when we need to say no, when we're turning our phones off, all the things that, to be able to nurture ourselves and really understand from that very adult place. So self-love can often be, if we're stuck in the child, is, well, I deserve a bar of chocolate. Well, that's a treat. That's often trying to reward an inner child who is looking for a parent to make her feel better and is using chocolate as a numbing way of doing it. So this is when we start to look at all of our behaviors and go, oh my God, this is why I'm doing it. And this is because maybe our inner children are kicking off and are ruling the roost, or in Claire's case, her inner teenager was kicking off and ruling the roost. When we're able to self-manage those parts of ourselves and the adult is able to come in, then it's a very, very different story.